two home games this year. You win two on the road, and you go back to last year. They started 9-1, then kind of fell apart at home.
It's really almost unexplainable. And I think that the Cardinals players, coaches, Cliff Kingsbury, I'm not gonna say they're tired of being asked about it, but they probably are.
Appreciate your strength here on Birds 365. McMullen and McDonald hanging with you. Our next guest is a first time appearing on Birds 365. Not first time appearing with me, because I've had this guy on my show for the past, 25 years or so. First time he had a full head of black hair. Now he's kind of gray, like Johnny
He's got the head of hair.
That's still got the hair.
Jody. Yeah.
Damn, he's looking good. Yeah. Howard Balzer, Sirius XM's Hall of Fame show, covering the Cardinals these days for PHNX.com. How you been, Howard?
I've been well. I'm glad you mentioned that about the hair, because I was saying maybe I should have cut it all off just for this appearance.
Yeah. No, you don't want to do that, Howard. Hang on. You're good at this point.
But no, going good. But just wanted to quickly mention before we get into it, it's actually gophnx.com. So hopefully a lot of people will check it out there and read my stuff on a very interesting local site here in Phoenix.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the Cardinals. Obviously, let's start there. I think it all begins with Kyler Murray, but for whatever reason, Howard, down the stretch of last season, early this season, they've struggled at home. They've struggled in Arizona. Why is that? Is it just a matter of competition? Because it's a little bit strange to lose two home games this year. You win two on the road, and you go back to last year. They started 9-1, then kind of fell apart at home.
It's really almost unexplainable. And I think that the Cardinals players, coaches, Cliff Kingsbury, I'm not gonna say they're tired of being asked about it, but they probably are, because it's one of those things that you say, well, you can't wave a magic wand, but it has happened. And so they've lost 7 consecutive home games dating back to last year. And Kingsbury said something interesting yesterday when he was asked about it. He's changed the tune a little bit. And he says, well, last year was last year. And this year we've lost to 2 pretty good teams at home, obviously, in the Chiefs and the Rams, but now playing a very good team this year also. So it's kind of crazy that that's the way it's been, and that they're so good on the road. And who knows? Sometimes you wonder, hey, is a team more focused a little bit on the road because they know it's, quote, everything's against us. When you get home, you want to do so well for those home fans that maybe you try a little too hard. I mean, who knows? We can throw out all these psychological reasons for it, but the fact remains the numbers are the numbers. And so they realize it. They probably don't want to think about it, because, you just have to go out there and play good football no matter who you're playing, home or away. And, we'll see what happens on Sunday, but they also know that this is going to be a very difficult matchup.
This is week number 5, and you're right. Eagles come in 4-0, Howard. During this offseason, there was a lot of drama attached to the Cardinals, 99% of it about their quarterback. And will he or won't he get the extension? They finally agree on the extension. Oh, the studying clause becomes a major issue.
I forgot about the studying clause.
The studying clause, but they apparently got that all worked out as well. Have they? Or is there still some not everybody on the same page aspect to the Arizona Cardinals right now?
I think they're getting there in terms of being on the same page. I think that there's not much talk anymore about all that drama and the homework clause and all that. And, when you look at these first 4 games, I mean, there's been drama since they were in training camp with different things that have happened to them, whether it's injuries or other situations. And then you look at the offense. I heard, John, I heard you talking at the end of the last segment about the Cardinals offense and defense. The defense has played pretty well since the second half against the Raiders in week 2, the miraculous game that they came from behind. And the offense has its moments, but they just get off to these horrible starts, and they don't convert third downs. They fall behind. They were fortunate last week against Carolina that they weren't playing a very good offense, and they did fall behind, but never by more than one score, and they were able to come back and pretty much dominate that game after the start. But they get asked about that every week. Fast starts. We have to start faster. And a lot of it just comes down to converting on third down, which they've been awful at the beginning of games. And so this has been a team, especially offensively, that they don't come out and say it for the most part. They knew how the beginning of the schedule was going to be tough. They knew they were going to be the first 6 weeks without DeAndre Hopkins. Then they didn't have Rondale Moore for the first 3 weeks. Another good complementary receiver, Antoine Wesley. They didn't have it all for the first 4. They think he'll be activated for this week from reserve injured. And so they've been, in a sense, treading water, hoping to just get through this first stretch of the season, just, bang it around 500. And then when Hopkins comes back, they can really turn on the jets. Now, will that happen? We'll have to wait and see, but that's certainly their hope. But, this is another tough one for them. And, they have Seattle the next week on the road before they play a game with Hopkins returning. And how will he be after not playing for 6 weeks? So those are all the questions that no one can really answer at this point.
Yeah, you mentioned DeAndre Howard. We see up close here in Philadelphia what a true number one receiver, the Eagles getting A.J. Brown, it does for the rest of the team. Hollywood Brown's a talented guy, but probably not a wide receiver one. But when Hopkins gets back, all of a sudden he becomes more difficult to deal with it. You mentioned Rondale Moore, and you mentioned that third down problem. I see they're 29th in third down percentage. How much does that have to do with just not having one of the best receivers in football?
I think it's a big thing. And let's remember, they didn't have him down the stretch at the end of last season either. And, head coaches like to fall on the sword a lot of times. And Kingsbury said, well, I didn't react that well and didn't deal as well as I could have after Hopkins left. But the reality is, what are you supposed to do? I mean, this is not high school. I mean, it's the NFL. Teams know where your weaknesses are. And you can only devise a game plan offensively that obviously is with the players that you have going against your opponent. So when you're talking about one of the top receivers in the NFL, not having him has a definite negative effect on the offense. And it was interesting yesterday, Cliff Kingsbury was asked about the impact on play calling and how does that have an impact when a guy like Hopkins isn't there? And the first thing he said was, well, my first college coach once said that it's not about the X's and the O's. It's about the Jimmies and the Joes.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we generally, when I say we, media fans, whatever, don't look at that. You just say, when an offense sputters, you say, oh, it's the quarterback. Oh, it's the play caller. It's all those things. But like you said, when you add an A.J. Brown, it makes Devonta Smith better. It makes everybody else better. It makes the running game better and all those things. And defenses have to account for so many more, weapons that a team has. And that's the essence of the NFL. It's personnel. Hey, your guy there, my guy from St. Louis, Dick Vermeil, always said it. In the 1999 season, when the Rams took the league by storm, and he said, it's amazing how much better coach I become when I have better players.
Yeah. Nick Sirianni says it all the time. He said, show me a good coach, I'll show you good players.
Bingo.
He says it. Yeah.
All right. I want to follow one more question on the wide receiver position, Howard. Last year, Cardinals' 3 top wide receivers, Hopkins, Moore, Christian Kirk. Hopkins hasn't been able to play. Going to have to wait another week. Christian Kirk got paid a boatload of money to go to Jacksonville. We just saw him here in Philadelphia last week. And Rondale Moore finally back off injured reserve, played last week. 3 catches, 5 targets for all of 11 yards. No, he's not a take the top off the defense guy, but that's not much as far as receiving yardage goes. Where is Moore at? Was it just getting his feet wet last week? Are they going to lean on him heavily this Sunday? Is he a key to this Cardinal offense against the Eagles?
I think he could be. And I'm glad you brought up Christian Kirk also, because I think it was last week I wrote a story and I was talking about the first few games of the season and what the Cardinals had done last year in the first 3 and what they did in the first 3 this year. And all of a sudden it jumped off the page at me when I looked at the numbers and not only saw what Hopkins's numbers were, but what Kirk's was. and he was making a lot of big plays, especially in that first half of the season. They envisioned Rondale Moore in taking over that role, and they had a lot of things planned for him. And he got hurt on the Thursday before the season opener, and it was really a tough adjustment at that point. And then he missed some games. They tried getting him into. He can be a top off the defense guy, and that's one of the ways that they were looking at utilizing him. So we'll see if that develops over a few weeks. But once again, he had just returned to practice last week, and then you're trying to get him into the game plan and see what you're able to do. The other part too is that teams against the Cardinals are playing a lot of zone. They're saying, hey, just throw it underneath, and do all those things. Yes, you have to take some shots, but we see that around the league, I think, in a lot of cases. And so getting that guy downfield can be a little difficult. But again, the more weapons you have, then it opens up things for some of those other players. So we're all interested. Like you said, he wasn't that much a part of the offense. Will he be more this week? I would suspect he would be, and that his role will then continue to grow as the season progresses, and even more when Hopkins comes back after the next 2 games.
Let's shift sides of the football, Howard. Talk about that defense now. You mentioned maybe they're playing a little bit better than people outside. I know PFF doesn't give them good grades defensively. What are they doing well? What are they struggling with? And how is JJ Watt? I mean, that's a scary situation for all of us outside looking in. The fact that he's able to get back so quickly and play at a high level.
Yeah, with JJ, and it was I don't know if you guys saw it, a very emotional press conference when he met with the media after the game in Carolina, and his lips were quivering at one point, on the verge of tears. But he was given all the advice from not only the doctors who shocked his heart back in rhythm, but he called specialists because they had said, hey, if you're comfortable playing, there's no reason why you can't. This could happen again tomorrow. It could happen whenever again in 20 years. So he called other specialists who basically said the same thing. And then when he said being comfortable, he says, I figured I'd be a lot more uncomfortable watching this game on the couch, knowing the doctors said that I could get out there and play. And he had a heck of a game against Carolina, albeit not a great offense. But I heard you mentioning about the pass rush earlier, and that still is a big question with this team. Marcus Golden doesn't have a sack yet. I'm sure he's affected by not having Chandler Jones on the other side. They have a whole bunch of young guys that they're hoping will emerge to get some pressure. But in answer to the question about what are they doing well, they're getting teams off the field, at least starting with that Las Vegas game. They're getting teams off the field on third down, and they've done a pretty good job of shutting down the other team's best player. They shut down Devonta Adams in week 2. They pretty much handled Cooper Kupp in week 3, and last week Christian McCaffrey was a non-factor. Now, the key question here against the Eagles there's a lot of weapons, and who do you? And Vance Joseph is going to be asked that later today when he meets with the media. Is there one guy that you account for on this defense? That can be pretty dangerous because of the multiple weapons that the Eagles have. So I think that's going to be the big question, is how that defense plays against a team that not only has these weapons, but obviously has Jalen Hurts and his ability to run also, that you have to be mindful of.
Howard, yesterday here in Philadelphia was a walkthrough Wednesday. So the injury report was a guesstimate because they didn't actually practice. So we've got the list that we have, and you speculate on what it's actually going to look like come Sunday. I saw the injury list for the Cardinals. It was pretty lengthy yesterday with non-participants and limited participants. Give us your best grasp of who will be in, who will be out, who's a maybe, who's a no shot whatsoever, Joe. How injured do the Cardinals come into this matchup on Sunday?
The big concern right now is really on the offensive line because there were 5 offensive linemen on the list, 4 that did not practice. 1 was a rest day for the right tackle, Kelvin Beachum, and 1 limited was the left tackle, DJ Humphries. But Justin Pugh is banged up. Max Garcia, who replaced Pugh when he left last week's game early because of an elbow injury, He's on the list with a toe injury. And Rodney Hudson, their very good center, has really been dealing with a knee injury since training camp. He's been playing, but he hasn't been playing at the same high level as he has in the past. And Kingsbury said yesterday, we're not going to know until the weekend on some of these offensive linemen who's going to be able to play and who isn't. So that becomes a big question when you're going up against a defense like the Eagles have with a lot of different guys that can fly to the ball and make plays. For Kyler Murray to do what he can do, for the running game to do what it can do, obviously you need that offensive line. And I think that's sometimes maybe not overlooked, but generally around the league, it's everyone always blames the play caller or blames this one or that one when an offense doesn't work. But a lot of times it's traced to offensive line play. And that's where the Cardinals have some concerns going into this weekend, especially when you have guys that aren't even practicing. Now, Beason will be back, but we don't know about Pugh. We don't know about Garcia and Humphrey. So guys, even if they're just limited, they're not taking all the snaps. And so that can obviously affect your preparation for a game against a very good team.
Howard, in an interesting twist, the Eagles might not have Jake Elliott to kick. The Cards might not have Matt Prater to kick. Is that the case? Is Matt Prater going to kick on Sunday?
It's not a might. Kingsbury said yesterday he will not.
Oh, oof.
And so they signed a guy named Matt Amendola.
Yeah.
No relation to Danny. In fact, he spells his name with 2 M's. But he kicked for Kansas City for 2 games earlier this season. And when he was elevated because the Chiefs kicker was injured, and in the loss to the Colts, he missed a 34-yard field goal in the fourth quarter and missed an extra point in the loss by Kansas City. So he's going to kick. And I noticed that about Elliott not practicing, and I quickly checked, do the Eagles have a guy on the practice squad?
Cameron Dicker. Cameron the kicker Dicker.
There we go. So there's your, who knows, maybe both teams will be having, kickers that haven't done it very much in games at an NFL level. So that could be, because Prater's one of the best there is. And when you have this situation, it's one thing looking good in practice, and Kingsbury said that yesterday. Oh, he looks sharp today. Well, great. But practice obviously is a little bit different than doing it in the crucible of pressure in an actual NFL game. So you never know what kind of an impact that could have.
Game decided by Amendola versus Dicker. Nobody thought that was going to be the case 7 days ago. That's for damn sure. I seem almost obsessed by the wide receiver position, but I got to ask about this. Andy Isabella was a guy who I liked a couple of years ago, later round draft pick, actually made some plays and put up some numbers and some stats for the Cardinals. Released this week. You're there every day. I thought, the kid's going to get a chance because Moore's starting the year hurt and Kirk is out of there and Hopkins is on IR. Well, Isabella released, flat out released. What the hell happened to him?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's always been some controversy about his selection because 2 picks later, the Seahawks, that was in the second round, actually, near the end of the second round in 2019, and 2 picks later, Seattle took DK Metcalf.
Yeah. Same thing here, Howard. It's JJ Arcega-Whiteside.
JJ, not the league either.
Yeah. So with Isabella, he had an okay beginning of his career, but he did come to the team when they had Christian Kirk and they had Larry Fitzgerald, and even Fitzgerald was at the end of his career, but he was playing more in the slot, which is where Isabella would most likely be. Then they add DeAndre Hopkins, and Kingsbury insists he's still going to be a productive player in the league. And I think he probably would have been released in the cut to 53 if Wesley had stayed healthy and Hopkins was there, maybe even if just Wesley was healthy. So he just was always a disappointment. And so the Cardinals, I thought it might happen when Wesley was activated from injured reserve, which he hasn't been yet. But then when they signed another offensive lineman just to have a guy as insurance, Billy Price, who they signed on Tuesday, it's 10 offensive linemen they have on the 53-man roster. When they signed him, they released Isabella, but I had felt this was a move that was probably coming. He saved his job a little bit with a good performance in the preseason, but most of that was with the backups against backups. He does have some speed, but I don't know. as Kingsbury said, a lot of times with receivers, when you come into the league, it's the right fit and the right situation and being able to get those opportunities. But for a lot of receivers, it's a tough adjustment. And that was the case with Isabella, who only had 33 receptions in his 3 seasons plus 4 games.
Taking me too long to get to derelict in my duty to get to Zach Ertz, Howard. Still a very popular person here in Philadelphia. Still works very hard in the community here. He has not left Philadelphia behind. He's got 22 catches already. How is Zach Ertz fitting in with the Cardinals?
He's fitting in tremendously, and he did last year. It's almost the year anniversary of the trade, which occurred on October 15th. And he was a big plus last year because with some of the injuries they had, especially Hopkins, he pretty much at one point became Kyler Murray's go-to guy. They expected a lot of big things from him this season. Big things haven't happened yet too much, but he was bothered by a calf injury for most of training camp, was limited in week 1 and has been coming on and playing a lot better football. I'm sure this is going to be an emotional game for him. He'll meet with the media later today, and I'm sure he'll get all those questions. Murray was asked about him yesterday, Kingsbury as well. I'm sure on one level he's glad this game isn't in Philadelphia because of maybe even being more emotional than it's going to be anyway. But in terms of his role in the offense, it's been tremendous. He's been a great leader in the locker room, setting a standard for younger players. The Cardinals have a young tight end, Trey McBride, who was a second-round pick this year. Hadn't played much, hardly at all in the first 3 games, but his snaps went way up last week and had a few catches and had some pretty significant catches in the game. So he talks all the time about how he's been helped by Zach Ertz. So he's been a tremendous plus for this football team after they got him last year.
All right, Howard, if this game is decided by height, the Eagles are going to win because the Cardinals have a couple of guys that are undersized. They're players, but they're undersized. Moore, we mentioned. Dortch, the kid who stepped in and played well, is also not even 5'8". And Eno Benjamin, who is their off-pace back. Connor is their main guy, much like Miles Sanders here in Philadelphia, but they use multiple backs, and Benjamin is that guy for the Cardinals. I've seen him make a couple plays this year, and I'm not even talking about his kicking prowess, filling in last week for the injured Cardinal kicker. How has Benjamin played? What should the Eagle fans be on the lookout for when he's in the lineup for the Cardinals?
He's done a nice job, along with Darrell Williams behind James Conner. I think the coaches are trying to figure out that job share because they don't want to have James Conner getting too many snaps. Last year, the first 8 games of the season when they had Chase Edmonds also, Edmonds played more snaps than Conner, and the Cardinals were 7-1 after those first 8. Then down the stretch, the last 9 games of the regular season, they only had 1 game where they were active together at the same time because of injuries. And so I think they're trying to figure out what the job share will be. But Benjamin's done a nice job running, and he's a tough little kid, as we saw in that kickoff when he went down on the first one and made the tackle. And so he's come a long way since his rookie year as a 7th-round pick when he wasn't active at all for any games. So he's been a plus. And I'm glad you brought up Dortch because I think he contributed also to the release of Isabella. Short guy, but whenever he's on the field, he makes plays and has been a big plus for them. And, Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, he's only 5'9".
Yeah.
So without A.J. Green, who didn't play last week because of a knee injury, they have a very small receiver core. They're hoping to get Green back this week. He did practice yesterday on a limited basis, so we'll see about that. But it is a small group. There's no doubt about it.
Do they make Zach Ertz kneel for the receiver picture? Because if not, he'd be head and shoulders above everybody else in that Cardinal receiver group.
He definitely would, and that's why he's been a big part of it. They want to get McBride more involved because those are a little bit bigger targets for the certainly undersized Kyler Murray. So that's a question. And Hopkins, when he comes back, he's not hugely tall, but at least he's over 6 foot. He's 6'1", and so that helps Murray too. But he's not there for this week, so they can't really start talking about that for a couple more weeks.
Oh, a couple guys who aren't small right in the middle of that defense. Those are the two guys I'm interested in, Howard. Zaven Collins, Isaiah Simmons, first round picks. Simmons, tremendous athlete. What's sort of the status? How are those guys playing?
Simmons has been a little mystery this year because last year he played a large majority of the snaps and they do a lot of different things with him. They thought in year 3 we can do even more things with him. A lot of times in the early part of practice that we can watch, he's working with the safeties. And so they call him the star linebacker, whatever you want to call that role. And he didn't have a good game in week 1 against Kansas City. And coaches felt a lot of it was work habits. At least that's what Kingsbury said. Vance Joseph tried to soft pedal it and say, well, it's all about packages. There's certain packages he's going to play in. But he only played 22% of the snaps in week 2 and then 33% in week 3. Last week, he got back to close to where he had been, playing over 80% of the snaps. And he's a playmaker. He makes plays with that athletic ability. Collins has been the real revelation this year because last season it took him a while to get accustomed to the NFL game, but he plays virtually all the snaps on defense. Not a big play guy, but he's very good against the run and is also pretty athletic. So, he's a big guy, like you said, in the middle of that defense. And he could be one of the keys for this week against the Eagles, especially in trying to hold down that running game where I see Miles Sanders has done, excellent job so far in the first 4 games, averaging almost 5 yards a carry. So Collins could be a real key there because for the Cardinals to slow down that offense, you still have to stop the run. And that's, I'm an old school guy. Yes, it's a passing league, but the teams on offense that are consistent are ones that also can run the ball and give defense. No defenses have to account for that. So, like I said, I think Collins can be a real key in how he plays and how this Cardinal defense does against the Eagles offense.
If your DC Vance Joseph fashions himself a package guy and different packages, different looks, different formations, how do you expect him to use Budda Baker this week? Because for me, the most talented football player, and J.J. Watt's had the certainly best career, but just right now, talent on the football team, I'd call him the Cardinals' best player. They need to use him right. They need to take his skills and I would say emphasize them more than any other. How has he used Budda Baker? How do you think he'll use Budda Baker against Eagles this Sunday?
I think he's pretty consistent in the way he's used at that position and very disciplined player. Does what he's supposed to do. The Bill Belichick mantra. Just do your job, and that's pretty much what he does on a weekly basis. I think the guy for you to watch in that secondary is Jalen Thompson, who's one of the most sure tacklers in the league. And a lot of people don't know that much about him. Signed a contract extension already heading into the final year this year of his 4-year contract as a rookie when he was a supplemental draft pick. And Jalen Thompson can play. And he had an interception last week, being in the right place at the right time. And so he's a guy that sometimes, moves around a little bit, especially as the Cardinals have had some depth issues at cornerback, which they definitely have had since the beginning of the season. But they might be getting Antonio Hamilton back this week. He's returned to practice after that crazy kitchen accident where he suffered burns on his feet right before the season opener. And then Trayvon Mullen Jr., who they got in a trade from the Raiders in the cut to 53, finally played some defensive snaps last week. So, but prior to that, Thompson was used in a variety of ways. And this is a guy that many people believe has Pro Bowl caliber ability, but probably he'll never make it as long as he's playing next to Budda Baker, because certainly there's not going to be 2 safeties from the same team to be in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah. At H Balzer 721, you can follow Howard there on Twitter. Read him at gophnx.com. Does a tremendous job covering the Arizona Cardinals. Now, you mentioned Howard Vance Joseph is talking today. I imagine he's going to get a lot of questions about Jalen Hurts. How do you deal with Jalen Hurts? How do you deal
Yeah.
with Jalen Hurts from your perspective?
Well, I think it's like any team when they play a guy like that. Just how's a team deal with Kyler Murray? How's a team deal with Lamar Jackson? How do you deal with a guy with a player like that can save a play at times when you think you have it and all of a sudden you don't? Maybe you think you have him sacked and then he escapes and then all of a sudden he runs and picks up valuable yards. So it's a tough thing. Do you spy or do you just play your defense and hope that you can just contain it? It's a tough thing for any team that plays a guy like that because you can just save plays. You can save plays that look like they're going to be negative plays and turn it into a big play. And so that's always tough for a defense, and especially tough when that guy also has the weapons that the Eagles have. So it's a tremendous challenge, as it's been a tremendous challenge for all the teams that the Eagles have played. And so that's why I think a lot of people like this team and what they've done. And you have to try to force them. I see the Eagles are number 1 in the league in turnover ratio.
Yeah.
+8. They've only turned it over twice in the first 4 games and taken it away, 10 times. So that's the thing obviously you hope for is being able to take the ball away. But obviously that's been pretty hard against this Eagles team. So, we'll see what they do on Sunday. By the way, I have to throw this in before I leave. I know you guys will appreciate that. I forgot to mention it when I was talking about Amendola. He's from the Philly area. He grew up in Lansdale and went to North Penn High School.
Penn, yeah.
That was near my stomping grounds in Springfield, Montgomery County. And I believe, if my memory is correct, that at one point North Penn might have been in the same conference as Springfield Montco when it was the Bucks-Mont League.
Yeah.
Johnny Mac
the Pettons, North Penn, one of them. I forget.
Oh yeah, I think
yeah.
John mentioned this earlier. He's former Jet, which is the team that I've only been rooting for 50 years. But he's touched base on a couple other spots, including Kansas City, as you noted earlier. Not necessarily great. Big guy. We talk about the little wide receivers. You put Amendola in the wide receiver room, he could be the biggest guy.
He's gonna be the kicker that wins in the weight room. I guarantee you that, Matt.
Well, I looked at his numbers last year when he kicked 11 games for the Jets.
Yeah.
2 for 5 from 40 to 49.
Thanks for opening that wound and rubbing salt in it, Howard. All right, we got like a minute left here. Quick question, tapping into your Hall of Fame expertise. Give me a percentage chance from 0 to 100. At some point, Jason Kelce will be putting on that gold jacket.
Oh, I would say that's probably I think that's a pretty high number. I mean, the career he's had, the consistency he's had, and I'd have to look it up there's probably not a whole lot of centers in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but I would say I don't know if it's the first year coming out of the box as a first time eligible, but I would say that he's a pretty good choice to be in that Hall of Fame someday. Who knows? Maybe he'll wait. He's waiting for Travis to retire.
Yeah, maybe. The first brother fandom. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
Who knows?
Tag team brothers into the Hall of Fame. Well, we appreciate your tagging in with us today, Howard. Always a pleasure. Thank you much. You gave us great Cardinal insight. We'll touch base down the road.
Look forward to it, guys. Take care. Have a good one.